Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take fascinating source material and really pull out the key insights for you.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a really quite ancient story. It's about the monk Mahākassapa and, well, a pretty extraordinary act of generosity.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. We've got, it looks like, 3 different takes on the same basic story here. Bits from a .md file, a .txt, and a PDF.
Right, likely different transcriptions or maybe translations of the same core narrative.
So our mission, our deep dive today, is to sort of piece these together, figure out the main events, and really understand the deeper meaning behind it all.
Let's do it.
Okay, so setting the scene, where does the story actually kick off?
Okay, so it starts in Rajagaha. The Buddha's residing at the Vyaphana monastery. And Mahākassapa, our main character here, he's just come out of a 7-day meditative absorption. It's called Nirodha.
7 days. Wow, that's intense. What exactly is Nirodha for anyone maybe less familiar?
Well, it's a very, very deep state, sort of a temporary stopping of mental activity, even sensory input. Extremely profound.
Okay, profound. And what's the first thing he does after emerging from this 7-day state?
His immediate plan is to go into Rajagaha to collect alms. And the texts actually point out he intends to collect them in order.
In order, what does that suggest?
It suggests a very mindful, structured approach, not just random collection, but following a specific sequence, likely house by house, shows real discipline.
Right, a deliberate act, not just routine. Okay, so he sets out. Does he get very far before something happens?
Not far at all. He's almost immediately met by, get this, 500 celestial attendants. They serve Sakka, who's the king of the gods.
500 celestial attendants.
Yep. One text even names them Kakuapadini, their goddesses.
That must have been quite a sight. And they're there to see him specifically.
They are. The texts say they're full of enthusiasm, really eager to offer Mahakassapa alms. They've even prepared 500 separate alms bowls.
500 bowls. So they approach him, asking him to accept.
Exactly. They ask him to accept their offerings, show them favor by taking the alms.
A wave of divine generosity. But Mahākassapa, he doesn't just take it, does he? This is where it gets interesting.
No, he doesn't. He actually refuses. Flat out declines this huge, generous offer.
Why? Why turn down goddesses?
His reason is very clear. He wants to support the poor. He tells them his priority lies with those who are truly in need.
Wow. So even an offering from the king of the gods' own entourage gets turned down because he's focused on helping the poor. That's quite something.
It really is. And they don't give up easily.
No, they push back.
They plead with him, don't forsake us, please accept. But he remains firm. His decision is made. He's there for the impoverished.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? The interaction gets a bit more forceful.
It does. After refusing again and seeing they're still insisting, he actually rebukes them, tells them they don't understand their place, basically tells them to leave.
He tells goddesses to leave.
And then there's this detail. He snaps his fingers at them.
He snapped his fingers at 500 goddesses. Seriously.
That's what one account says. The sound startles them, and they can't stay. They just flee straight back to the heavenly realm.
Okay, that's unexpected. So they go back and report this to Sakka, the king of the gods.
Yes, they tell him the whole story, how they approached Mahākassapa, fresh from his meditation, ready to offer alms.
And got refused. And finger snapped. Sakka must have had questions.
Oh, definitely. He asks, did you actually offer the alms? Why wouldn't he take them? What exactly did he say?
One of the details.
Right. And they tell him about Mahākassapa's intention to help the poor, and also, importantly, how they approached him.
So Sakka hears all this. Even his divine attendants were turned away. What does he decide to do? This is fascinating.
He decides he's going to offer alms himself. He figures if goddesses couldn't do it, maybe a different tactic is needed.
A different tactic involving
disguise. He resolves to appear as someone completely unassuming, a very old, very frail weaver, someone you'd think is absolutely destitute.
the king of the gods as a frail old weaver. What kind of details do we get about this disguise?
Quite specific. Broken teeth, gray hair, bent over, looking feeble, working diligently at a loom. And he doesn't go alone.
Oh, who's with him?
He transforms the goddess Sujo into an equally old woman to be his companion. So it's an elderly weaver couple.
They're really committed to this illusion. Where do they set up this little scene?
They create a whole weaver street just outside the city gates. Sakka is at his loom, Sujo's twisting thread. It really shows Sakka's determination, you know? He wants to give these alms personally.
Meanwhile, Mahākassapa is still walking towards the city. still planning to find someone poor to help.
Exactly. His intention hasn't changed. As he gets near the city, he spots this Weaver Street and sees this, well, seemingly very poor elderly couple working away.
And this resonates with him, presumably, given his mission.
Perfectly. He looks at them, working so hard in their old age, and thinks, surely there's no one in Rajagaha poorer than these two.
So he sees them as the ideal recipients.
Yes. He decides he'll definitely accept something from them, even just a little bit, like a spoonful of rice, just to give them that support, that connection.
Okay, so he's drawn to them. But Sakka's got a plan, right? Bit of stage management involved.
As Mahākassapa gets closer, Sakka whispers to Sujar, pretend you don't see him coming.
Why? To seem more natural.
Yeah, basically to trick Mahākassapa into thinking they're just simple folk, maybe a bit oblivious, so he won't suspect anything and will accept the alms.
A little bit of divine trickery. So Mahākassapa arrives at their spot. What happens?
He reaches their dwelling, this makeshift workshop, and just stands there, waiting patiently at the entrance.
And Sakka and Suja.
They keep up the act for a moment, pretending to be absorbed in their weaving, not noticing him.
Really playing their parts. How does Sakka finally notice him?
After a moment, Sakka comes out of the house, sees Mahākassapa, and makes this incredibly deep bow, 5 points touching the ground. Total reverence.
But he's still pretending to be frail.
Oh, yes. He acts all weak, distressed, like, oh my, such an esteemed guest. My eyes are so cloudy, I almost didn't see you. Then asks, do we? Do we have anything at all we could possibly offer?
Playing it up. And Suja?
She plays along, seeming a bit flustered, and says hesitantly, yes, I think we have something.
So Sakka takes Mahākassapa's bowl.
Yes. Sakka takes the bowl and says something like, please, Venerable Sir, accept whatever we have. Don't worry if it's coarse or simple. Just accept it as an act of kindness towards us poor folk.
And Mahākassapa, still thinking they're genuinely poor, agrees. Then comes the offering itself, which isn't quite what you'd expect from a poor weaver, right?
Not at all. Sakka goes inside, takes cooked rice from a pot, one text calls it gayadana, fills the bowl right up, and places it in Mahākassapa's hands.
And the food.
It's extraordinary, described as rich, full of different curries and flavors, and the smell. The aroma apparently spreads throughout the entire city of Rajagaha.
The whole city. From one bowl of rice. Okay, that would definitely make you pause.
Exactly. Mahākassapa looks at this incredibly rich, fragrant food, supposedly from these destitute weavers, and he starts thinking.
Thinking what?
This doesn't seem like the food of poor people. This smells like the food of Sakka. The quality is just too high, too divine.
So the penny drops. He realizes who they are.
He does. He recognizes Sakka through the disguise.
And how does he react? Is he angry about the deception?
Not angry, more like a gentle chiding. He says something quite profound, actually. He tells Sakka, you've done a great thing, but by doing this, you might have deprived some truly poor people of the chance to gain immense merit.
What does he mean by that?
He suggests that if a genuinely poor person had given such a special offering, the merit could have been so great, it might have even led them to a much higher social status, maybe even rebirth in a better position. Sakka's act, while generous, took away that specific opportunity from someone truly needy.
That's a really interesting perspective. Giving can have ripples, and maybe Sakka interrupted a potentially life-changing ripple for someone else. How does Sakka take this?
Sakka's reply is just as interesting. He says very humbly, Venerable Sir, in my own view, no one is poorer than I am.
Poorer than Sakka, the king of the god. That sounds paradoxical.
It does. Mahākassapa basically asks him to explain that. How can the ruler of a heavenly realm consider himself poor?
And Sakka's explanation, it's not about material wealth, is it?
Not at all. It's about a kind of spiritual poverty. Sakka explains that yes, he has his divine status, but since the Buddha appeared, other gods have arisen who performed meritorious deeds more recently, or perhaps more significantly.
Other gods?
Yes, he names 3. Krisadevaputta, Maharadevaputta, and Anikevanakadevaputta. He says these gods are now more radiant than he is.
More radiant? How does that make him feel poor?
He describes how when these gods and their entourages come by for celestial fun, their brilliance is so overwhelming that he feels diminished. He actually retreats indoors, but his radiance doesn't affect them in the same way.
So it's a feeling of inferiority, like he's been surpassed in spiritual brightness.
Exactly. He feels overshadowed, less potent in that specific divine quality. And that feeling, that comparison, makes him believe he's the poorest among them in that sense.
It's a fascinating insight for you, isn't it? Poverty isn't just lack of things.
Absolutely. A celestial keeping up with the Joneses, but based on spiritual radiance.
Wow. Okay, so how does Mahākassapa respond to this unusual explanation?
He seems to understand the sentiment, but he still gently requests that Sakka avoid this kind of deception when offering alms in the future. The priority should still be letting the genuinely poor benefit directly.
Makes sense. Does Sakka then ask if his offering still counted, merit-wise, despite the disguise?
Yes. He asks, did I still make merit by giving like this? And Mahakassapa confirms, yes, the act of giving itself is meritorious.
So Sakka gets that reassurance.
He does. And he concludes, basically, okay, doing meritorious deeds is my job, my responsibility. He seems satisfied with that.
So the interaction concludes there. What happens next?
Sakka pays deep respect to Mahakassapa again, walks around him clockwise, circumambulates him along with Sucha. Then they ascend back into the sky.
And as they go,
Sakka shouts out this exclamation of pure joy, something like, Aho, dana kasapesapatthera. He repeats it maybe 3 times.
which means?
Oh, the donation, the highest donation, is well established in Kassapa. It's like a triumphant declaration of the value of giving to someone like Mahakassapa.
A powerful statement echoing through the heavens. And someone else hears this, don't they?
Yes. The Buddha, back in the monastery, hears Sakka's joyful shout.
And he knows who it is.
Instantly, he turns to the monks who are with him and says, basically, did you hear that? That was Sakka, rejoicing because he managed to give alms to my son, Kaspa, even though he had to use a trick.
He calls Mahākassapa his son. That's quite a statement of their connection.
It really is. Shows incredible affection and spiritual kinship.
And the monks, hearing this, they have a question, right?
Yeah, naturally. They asked the Buddha, how did Sakka know it was so important or appropriate to give alms specifically to Mahakassapa?
What's the Buddha's answer?
He explains that his disciple, Mahakassapa, who lives this simple life sustained only by alms food, is someone that everyone, gods and humans alike, desires to support. He reiterates the my son comparison, emphasizing Mahakassapa's virtue.
And doesn't the Buddha then offer his own praise in verse form?
He does. He recites a gatha, a verse. Piṇḍapātadāna bhikkhuno ataborasanna nyapposino devapiayanti tadino pasantasa sada satamato.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. It essentially says, gods envy this kind of monk, the one who lives purely on alms, who sustains himself, doesn't rely on supporting others, who is constant, peaceful, and always mindful. It's high praise for that way of life.
Beautiful. And the Buddha elaborates further on why Sakka was so drawn to Mahākassapa, connecting it to virtue.
Yes, he explains Sakka's act was prompted by the fragrance of virtue, silaganda, emanating from Mahakassapa.
The fragrance of virtue, like his goodness had a perceptible quality.
Exactly. The Buddha contrasts it with material sense using another verse. And the meaning of that one?
It says, basically, that the scent of things like taga wood or sandalwood is limited. It doesn't travel that far. But the scent of virtue, the sulaganda of someone morally disciplined, that wafts supreme even among the gods, it reaches everywhere.
So Mahakassapa's inner qualities were so powerful they literally attracted the king of the gods. That's incredible. It underlines the immense power attributed to ethical conduct and meditative attainment in this tradition.
What was the effect of the Buddha sharing this whole story in these verses with the monks?
The sources say it was very impactful. Many listeners attained various stages of spiritual insight right then and there, including the first level, stream entry, or samadhi. The whole discourse was seen as highly beneficial.
What an amazing story. So much depth there. As we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things you think we should take away?
Well, first, definitely Mahākassapa's incredible dedication to helping the truly poor. His priorities were crystal clear, even turning down divine gifts. That's huge.
Right. That really stands out.
It's second, Sakka's side of it, his creative generosity, but also that surprising feeling of poverty, despite being a king of gods. It challenges our ideas about wealth and status.
That idea of spiritual inadequacy even at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really thought-provoking.
And finally, the Buddha's emphasis on the sheer power of virtue. The Silaganda and his praise for the simple, mindful life of living on alms. It shows the value placed on inner qualities over external appearances or even divine status.
So dedication to the needy, a surprising form of divine humility, and the supreme power of virtue. Great summary.
It really covers the core themes, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So a final thought perhaps for you, our listener, to chew on. This story shows generosity taking different forms, doesn't it? Open, disguised. Maybe consider what motivates our own acts of giving, and what does the wealth or poverty truly mean beyond the material. This ancient tale gives us a lot to reflect on regarding those deeper spiritual dimensions.